Okay, we'll make a start. We've just clicked over 12:30. So welcome to our fifth webinar in the series of webinars. The first four really focused on remote working and the transition from working in the office to working to home. What we've started to pick up over the coming weeks is this theme of what's the future going to look like, and so that is the theme of today's webinar. My name is Greg Bull. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a project director at Coxswain Alliance. I've been doing business consulting for more than 10 years now. Prior to that, I had various leadership roles in industry and in retail and in convenience retail. And a part of my role here is as a leadership and management coach. On the line today, we have Phil Wong and others from the Coxswain team. So they'll be monitoring the chat box, and if you have any questions or comments on the information we're talking about, Phil and others will endeavour to respond. They won't endeavour; they will respond to your questions or comments. And that way, we've found by people actively adding comments as we go has been very useful in informing us, particularly for future webinars and future themes as to the information, help and support that people might need in the future. We'll conduct a short survey in a moment just to get a sense of where our heads are at in terms of the future. We'll provide some information around what we think the next normal will look like. And as I said, as we communicate with you through the webinar, it'd be great to gauge where people's interests and thoughts are moving forward, so we can sort of tailor more webinars or content that might be helpful for you. So today I'm going to talk about a view of what we believe the next normal may look like, and the challenges are really that are going to come out of that. We're already facing some challenges with the initial piece, but what that's going to look like and what particular capabilities and things we're going to need and what things we're going to be doing differently in the short term and the long term to really be able to adapt and change as the environment changes, as we prepare for the what we're calling the next normal. Well, the impact of the pandemic has been unprecedented. I guess in the past, things like Spanish flu, the world wars, the oil shocks, 70s, 80s, and most recently the GFC have had similar impacts on our economies. But this has happened very quickly in such a broad scale that it is literally unprecedented in what's happened, and we need to be thinking about. Yes, we've had an immediate response to that, but what is the world going to look like moving forward? It's widely anticipated that we're going to enter a period of recession, and we don't know how deep or how long that is going to be. What's also, I think, we'll find is if we look back through history, we'll see that these types of events tend to create generational change in the way things are done. And part of today is really is to offer some insights and some thinking around what that may look like. It'd be great to understand also and share as we go through this. If people have some opinions around what they think or their views or insights might be as well, that'd be very useful. Put that in the chat box, because I think as a group, it's great to sort of start thinking about what the future might look like, and there are many views and opinions as to what that could be. Okay, so just quickly, if you could, I'll put a survey up now, and I'd like you to answer these the question on the screen. You can choose more than one response, and so I'd like you to, if more than one of these things is concerning you, I'd like you to enter a response in the by making a selection on the survey. So, what are your major concerns? Is it the immediate transition back to the workplace? Is it the concern of managing a mix of office-based and remote teams? The fact that work is changing and customers' expectations are changing as well. We're all learning to work and respond and act differently, and that's going to create a challenge moving forward. And the recession obviously is a big one. What is that going to mean for us, for our teams, for our organisations, and the jobs and those people that we're responsible for? Not just our families, but also our colleagues, but also our customers and suppliers alike as well. I think it's been a really interesting time in that. I guess it's an opportunity like these where we see that the best in people come out is we've had real concern, not just for ourselves and our peers and our colleagues, but also our customers and our suppliers as well, as to how we can help them. help them counteract what's happening and get the best out of what is a really challenging situation. So please enter one or more answer in the chat box. If you could all at least put one in, that would be fantastic. It really helps inform us, particularly moving forward, what to keep talking about and what the challenges will be as we work with some of you in some engagement we have running at the moment, but also as we sort of communicate and try to really tailor and prepare ourselves for the future as well. We're in a business of helping people in business improvement, so understanding what the concerns and challenges are really helps inform us as to how we need to change and tailor what we do as well. Any more quick? I'm about to shut this off, so all done. Anyone like to get a final response in? Okay, we'll end that, and I'll just quickly click share results and we get a sense of what we've got. So so the main ones being the major concerns being extended recession, and also being managing that blended workforce mix of remote, transitioning back to the new workplace. Interesting, that's not high on the agenda, and I think we're going to talk about this a bit later on. But is it going to be as straightforward as we potentially think, and maybe not? And the work will change. I think I understand why that's not a huge concern at the moment, but I think that is going to play out over the coming weeks and months as to what those changes might look like. Just jump back to the presentation. So here's a quotation from Al Gore, and previously I think from JFK, John F. Kennedy. As I said before, crisis situations tend to lead and upheaval tend to lead to opportunity and challenges. Out of adversity spring as the mother of invention, or necessity is the mother of invention, and that's what we're seeing at the moment. We're starting to do things very differently as a result of the pandemic. The response of governments and businesses alike has been rapid and large. Governments have thrown money towards us, and what it has done, it's really created an environment for accelerated digital disruption, is what I'm calling it. Is we were in the process of sort of transitioning to much more e-commerce and working from home and that sort of stuff. But what we've seen in the last few weeks has just gone bang, and it's really led to a really substantial change in what we are doing. History will show that things like this, pandemics, I guess, is quite liberating. People are doing things very differently, and some of these things are going to stay with us, and some of these things are probably going to go away, and we don't really know which ones they are. But I think it's fairly safe to assume that such a massive upheaval will result in things being very different for us moving forward. I think some key things. I think the Great Depression really marked the end of what they call the railway economy. It really sparked consumerism is what came out of the Great Depression, and so it's that sort of substantive change that the many are expecting to happen as a result of the pandemic. And I think the challenges that's going to place on us in organisations, particularly as managers and leaders, is what that's going to be. Particularly in the next few years, the next normal, we believe, will require a real uptick in our ability to respond and make rapid decisions. We've seen that very quickly. We've seen that recently. And so that as things change, as customers change their behaviours, as our competitors respond differently to that, our ability to make decisions quickly and respond to those changes and execute them is going to be important, as is, I think, our ability to not be too dogmatic about the things we've put in place, because the preparedness to pivot and change is going to be really, really important. We'll make decisions, we'll have a read of the future, and then things will change again, and we'll need to probably very quickly be able to analyse those changes as they come through and make a very quick decision to change course. I think the working model has changed and will change forever. And I think the way we did things in the past with the old playbook will change. I think remote working is an example. And we've already seen some examples today, just in some of the comments we had when people joined us around whether they do or don't like remote working, or whether we we like a bit of both. And I think there are a number of people that were early adopters, probably working from home and loving it prior to the pandemic. And this has really given an opportunity to push it further. How far can we take that? What can technology do for us to make remote working even better, more efficient, even more effective? Curiously enough, though, in talking with many of our people we've worked with in the past, is those that have companies that have found it hard or resisted, or the challenge of working from home has been too great, have found that it has been much being forced upon them and forcing that rapid decision making has been actually much better than they previously anticipated that it would be. And so they've had these light bulb moments. It's actually, yes, remote working is possible, and it can be done quite effectively when done right. And I think our previous webinars discussed that. And so I think that will mean that the world will change significantly in how, not just in terms of how we work, but also how we start interacting with customers and suppliers, and how those business relationships will change. Travel for some time is going to be, it's probably going to be very limited. And so that ability to do business via Zoom or whatever application you use is going to change. Businesses and customers are now, I think in the past we were dipping our toes in e-commerce and online commerce. This has really forced the issue. Many companies have had to rapidly rethink their old ways of doing things. In the past, e-commerce was very much about how can it complement or augment our traditional way of doing business. What the pandemic has done, it's really said, okay, we're going to have to potentially think of ways to actually do business very differently as a bigger part of our business than what we were in the past, and that's going to change things a lot, particularly in terms of our headspace and what we're going to be doing moving forward. So with the changing landscape, the needs of our people and customers has changed, and what I'm trying to show here is a transition. We're sort of at the moment, I think, transitioning from those red clouds into the yellow clouds. We've had this immediate rapid change where health and safety, remote working, and job security has been really top of mind. We're now heading to this near-term back to business and survival thing. So I think the survey shows that a lot of us are concerned about the recession and what that might look like, returning to work, changing customers' needs. The mere fact that this has happened means that, particularly if you're in financial services or banking or insurance, the work and the work volumes have changed or shifted from what they were to a new paradigm. It could be people reviewing their mortgages, their insurance claims, etc. So work patterns have shifted, and so that means that there's changing the way we're doing things. There's a substantial reduction in revenues, and is that going to change? We've had a real change in the way we work, and so now we've sort of got ourselves up and running. Now, are we efficient and as effective as we used to be? And so those things are now starting to play out, and that's what, as leaders and managers, we need to be thinking about. How, yes, we've got over this initial thing. Now the world has changed. How are we effectively meeting our customers' needs, and is it meeting the needs of our businesses and our people as well? Looking beyond that, though, is imagining now extended period of recession. So cost containment is going to be big. Customer expectations are going to change. Job displacement and new ways of working. What I mean here is that change of the change of the nature of work. Some jobs will become less important, and some jobs which weren't as important will grow. So that will need a degree of upskilling and retraining. And so our headspace is be thinking about what does that look like moving forward, and how do we help facilitate that? This changing landscape means that as a leader, as a manager, your behaviours and practices will need to adapt as well. The old way of working, doing things, the quite conservative or consistent or safe way we're doing things has changed. And so what we need to be thinking about as a leader and as a manager is, okay, my team, my customers, my business has changed. What are those pressures meaning for me, and how do I help my people and my team through that? So times of uncertainty, empathy and empathy is important, and building trust at this time, as we're having genuine concerns about health and safety and job security, is by we need to build trust again with our staff, and with our customers, and with our suppliers. There's people in uncertain situations need to know that they can trust us to do the right thing and do what we're doing. And so by showing authentically caring for people and their circumstances, and doing things that help and support will help build that trust. And it's not just caring about, I guess, yes, it's about caring for people's well-being, but in the customer supplier relationship, it's recognizing that, okay, times are different. As a supplier, maybe it is harder for you to get things to me, and to my customers, it's for me to have those conversations. Like, these situations have changed. We're trying to do this, but things are different. It's going to be harder than it was before. So being empathetic to those things, and rebuilding those relationships, and creating a greater level of empathy and trust between our staff, our customers, and our suppliers. Now more than ever, I think, is having start to think about the future, and particularly as a leader and a manager, it's embracing that the world is going to be different, and start to think about what that means for your teams. It's then providing a clarity of purpose. This is what we think the future might look like. This is our response to that, and this is what our role, or your role, or our team's role is going to be in getting to that future. Things are a bit different now, but this is the path we're on now, and create a sense of purpose and create a why. So try to create some certainty out of uncertainty to help people process what's happening and say, okay, the focus of the organization, the focus is this. We're doing this for our customers, and this is the reason why we're doing it. Yes, it's different from what it was before, but this is what is important now. And providing those boundaries and clarity for people really helps unravel some of that uncertainty and create a vision for the future of what and why, particularly why we're doing things. And be really open about that. I think it's important to. It's very easy for managers and leaders to go into meeting rooms and envision and come up with ideas and strategy, but we're not always very good at clearly articulating what that means for our people. And I think now more than ever, that clarity and communication is really, really important. I think most of us have done that really, really well with the transition to remote working, and the dangers and the health situation, those things. But we now need to continue that with the future. I think in the last few weeks have shown that organisations are very good when the pressure's on at making quick decisions. We've rapidly changed the way we do things. We've rapidly moved people to work, and we've moved things on very quickly. That's going to need to change, and we need to and it sort of happened by accident rather than design. We now need to make the design of our organisation and our management structure such that we are set up to make quick decisions. So think about how we transitioned to where we are now, and think about, okay, what things worked and what didn't in our decision-making processes. What information did we need or didn't we have? And in fact, what will surprise a lot is that we often spend a lot of time, or did in the past, probably analysing and wanting to make perfect decisions, having lots of information and making the right decision. What we've learned in the last month or so is that you can make quick decisions with imperfect data that are directionally right. And so thinking that through and what worked and what didn't work is saying, okay, moving forward, if this is our vision and purpose of where we're trying to get to, how do we facilitate quick decision making? How much information is the right amount of information to make decisions to change course or pivot or move forward or do things differently for our customers? What do we need, and how do we facilitate it? How do we prevent that slow decision making of the past and bottle more of that rapid, effective decision making that we've done recently? And I think so from a capability piece for leaders and managers, say, how do we get better at making quick decisions, and what do we need to facilitate, and what mechanisms do we need to set up to make that happen? That's my phone. I'll turn that off. So once we've envisioned what the future looks like, we need to forecast. Now, envisioning is about understanding where we're going. The forecasting piece, I think, is about putting some more meat on the bones for yourselves and for your people. It's about setting a very near-term, mid-term, and longer-term expectations. And at this point, this is about making it really quite specific for your team. So this is based on our purpose, what we're trying to do for our customers. These are the things we really need to focus on. This is what we're doing. In the midterm, longer term, build out a similar, but maybe not so detailed view of the world, but really think about longer term where we need to get to and articulate that with your teams. Give people a license to operate. In a remote or blended world, we don't have that ability to necessarily have those fast, quick interactions that we did in the past. So I think it's really important, this setting specific targets and outcomes around what we're trying to achieve, and then letting your people know that within these boundaries, the expectations, these are the things that we can do, and delegate that to people to enable them to do that and give them the license to operate. So in very clearly defined expectations. If variations then occur, start to anticipate what they might be, and when you're going to need to intervene, or when, not necessarily intervene, when they're going to need to seek extra support. So set clear expectations as to what the world, this is what we're doing and why we're doing it. This is up to your authority levels of this. You are empowered to make decisions to that point. So do it, make it happen. Don't be shy in using the delegated authority that you have. Work with your team to create, as I said before, don't go into a room and come up with your strategy and scenarios. Do this with your team, with your people. Creating much greater clarity of uncertainty and what scenarios might play out will help you and your teams reach faster decisions. Think about what's going to happen moving forward, and are we set up to do that? Do we have the right data and tools to make these decisions? Are our work practices and management practices right for the new times? Are we able to respond and act and deliver in the way we think we're going to need to? What needs to change? How are we going to do this? Really articulate to people how we're going to interact with ourselves, with our customers, with our suppliers to make this. Have a plan, have a forecast, but I think given the changing nature of the world, expect to have to change and pivot. So as part of your forecasting and planning process, build in opportunities to check in, take stock. Are we on track or off track? And do we need to change course? And make that part of your operating rhythm. Don't be dogmatic about this is the future we've envisioned and this is the strategy we come up with, because as the world changes, we're going to need to respond. Probably lots of small iterations rather than big changes we go through. So set yourselves up to be able to do that. I think a big one is, and we saw that in the survey, is this blended workforce. We've transitioned from probably most people at work, maybe some occasionally at home, to everyone being at home and remote, to possibly a world where it might be 50-50 split, which is once again this transition back to work is going to be. I don't think we're going back to what we were at before. We're going back to a new world. And so this transition back to a new way of working is going to be different. So I would be thinking about, how do we induct people back to this new way of working? We went from being totally remote, now back to some kind of split workforce. So how are the mechanisms that we built and operating rhythm we put in place for remote working going to work? And are they going to work as effectively when we're split between office-based and home-based? What I've found in the past is working with teams that have had people in remote locations is often that the people in what I call the office location, or where the manager or the larger group is, tend to work more effectively, and the others that are in remote locations, there's often we lose a bit in translation. What we've done recently is, because we've all been remote, we've had to translate better. The risk is that once again is those in the office location, those that are co-located, we then lose the translation with those that are remote based. So I think it's very important to think about the transition back to work and how we maintain that effective communication and collaboration moving forward. There's going to be health and safety concerns as well. We're going to be operating with social distancing and those sorts of things for a period of time, so they need to be built in. As I said, survey data shows that people like working from home, but a lot of people like doing both. And so I think the future says it's going to be a mix. And I think preparing for the blended workforce is probably as complicated as going from office-based to home-based. So I think it's getting that balance right, so the people in the co-located locations versus those in remote locations, that we don't lose the translation and collaboration that is what makes a team so effective. So thinking further forward, as assuming the recession and things happen and revenues drop off, then cost reductions and cost control and productivity are going to become really top of mind again. I think in the past we've really focused on businesses have had costs, has been that we went through large cost pressures a number of years ago. Then we're on sort of growth cycles and those sorts of things, and customer centricity. It's going to be, customer centricity isn't going to drop off, but now we're going to have to be more efficient and more effective in how we do that. So I think the learnings of the recent period is, what have we learned in the way we've done things differently that we can continue to be productive and effective in what we do and delivering quality and service to our customers. Customers are going to be expecting different things, so we're going to have new ways of working. Some jobs that we did a lot of in the past are going to change, and so the job mix will change. So start to think about preparing yourself for retraining, reskilling, and cross-skilling your teams as the work mix changes, because customer demands are changing, because the economy and the environment is changing. And so that productivity piece is around, if I don't have enough people with the right skills, then my ability to meet my customers' expectations are going to change. Conversely, if I have too many people with a skill for work that's now dissipating, then my business becomes unproductive and inefficient. So getting a handle of those changes and thinking about where's the retraining, reskilling, and cross-skilling going to come from is going to be really, really important for leaders and managers moving forward. The world is changing, and responding to that is going to change. And I think the decision making is going to change significantly as well. The old data may not be, the data we used to use may not be representative of what the near-term trends are. So we really need to be thinking about what information data I have that's informing me about customer behavior, and how well set up am I to interpret that, identify the emerging trends, and then really it's about applying the critical thinking to those trends and saying, hey, what do we need to do? What's working, what's not? Understanding why, and then working with your teams about, okay, what do we need to do differently? And then getting that out there, making those rapid decisions to get that out to market. There's a real danger here that we get caught on the hop. Is the customer needs and expectations change, or our competitors' responses to that change quicker than ours? And if we don't read the changes or pick up those trends early enough, that's going to cost us. Remember, we're going to a period of time where we're in recession, revenues are down. Speed to market is going to be really imperative in understanding what's going on. So setting yourselves up with your teams to recognize the trends as they come through and be able to respond to them really quickly is going to be a critical activity and capability for you and your teams moving forward. And if we're not focused on that, we run the risk of being left behind. And in uncertain times, your team are going to really rely on leaders around them to keep those teams together. As we said earlier, I think we're moving to a period of moving forward of this blended workforce of people going back to work. Work's going to be very different, and we're going to be in multiple locations in a blended workforce. So the role of a leader and a manager is to be the glue that holds it together. So part of that is, firstly, being present and visible in a virtual world. So what does that mean? And we're starting to learn that at the moment with remote working. Is when do I use Zoom? When do I use video meetings? When do I pick up the phone? When do I use chat? How do I provide the support to my team that, one, is supportive, and two, isn't burdensome and creating extra time and effort for them and impinging on their day? We spoke about in the earlier webinars about helping people develop their best way of working, and the role of a manager and a leader in helping people find out what that is, and then using that to create that team environment. Being present is also about, as I said before, it's about understanding what's happening with your team and with your customers, and then responding to changes and being proactive, picking the trends, talking to your team, and they'll get the people at the front line often know long before the data shows it. Often you get anecdotes from your teams around, now these are the conversations I'm having, this is what the work I'm doing, I'm getting less of this, I'm getting more of that. And then the data starts to come through. So having those conversations with your team about those customer experiences and what people are saying and feeling and doing helps inform, and then you can go and look for the data that maybe supports those anecdotes and then maybe make some decisions. So those are important considerations in being proactive. More than ever now, role clarity is really important. As things change, people need to know exactly, what is important, what's our purpose, what's my role in that, what's my responsibility, what license do I have to operate, what's been delegated to me, and what am I empowered to do, and how well aligned is that to, and align that to the purpose. So let's keep ourselves aligned to where we're going and make that work. The blended workforce, the remote workforce, there's a real danger, and some conversations I've had in the last week confirms this, is that where it was so easy to collaborate before because we were co-located and we could very quickly talk to people and get something happening, that's much harder in the blended and remote working workspace. The role as a manager and as a leader is to facilitate the collaboration. It's to help it's more than just saying, guys and girls, you've got to collaborate. It's facilitating and coaching and making that work. It's encouraging people. If we used to talk a lot and discuss things and bounce ideas off each other, that was the way that our rhythm worked. Then as a manager, your role is to help your teams recreate that now that we're going to be, some is co-located, some is remote located. Let's not just have the co-located people collaborating. We need to bring in the subject matter experts and ensure that we're doing it better. I think the experience of the last month or so of remote working we're much more familiar now with the technology and how to use it. And I saw some data this week for NAB have been analysing their trends of time meetings and emails and trying to ascertain whether people are working longer or shorter. That's, from what I can see from their data, it's starting to normalise. So what that suggests to me is we're getting used to working remotely and the technology, and so we're getting better at it. Our role of managers is to say, now that we're going back to the workplace and we have cohorts that are co-located and cohorts that aren't, it's how do we continue to facilitate that really strong collaboration that we had in the past. So in summary, I like to nail this down to three key things. I think it's about building a foundation, and part of that foundation is that empathy and trust that we spoke about at the start. These are challenging and uncertain times. It's really important that as leaders, we build empathy and trust with our people and with our customers and suppliers. It's about recognizing and understanding the plight, the situation that we're all in, and how do we continue to work well together collectively. To do that is having that shared vision and purpose. This is the way we see, this is what we see unfolding. This is where we fit within that, and clearly articulating as to how that looks and works for your team. As communication is really important. Think about the now, the midterm, and the longer term, and talk to your team and your people about the expectations within each of those timeframes on a regular basis. Those expectations need to be really clear. I think the danger in this sort of situation is if everything's too fluid or too grey. Grey can be stressful for a lot of people. People like to have some certainty and clarity of expectations. So it's really about saying, these are our immediate term goals. These are things we need to achieve. This is what a good day looks like. This is what our productivity should look like. This is what our customer expectations are. This is how we continue to meet these quality expectations. This is how we continue to meet service expectations. It's being unyielding in that delivery of your customer expectations with your group in those timeframes. Within that, though, that's about creating clarity. Creates you can delegate and empower if you're very clear in your expectations in the way you communicate to people what we're trying to achieve. Is delegating and empowering people to work within that is very easy to do. If people have a very clear understanding of what we're trying to do and why and what their role is, then that's very empowering. And so the role as a leader and a manager is to really empower people and say, this is what good looks like. Your job is to do that. If things get a little bit grey, then you have license to do this because this is what we're trying to achieve. That will continue to make you efficient and effective in what you do. Collaboration is important. There is a real risk that as we come back to work and we have this mix and blended workplace, is that collaboration drops off again. Is the co-located people will naturally collaborate well together. It's about ensuring that we collaborate with the entire team, and the sense of isolation that is often recorded and felt by home-based workers is often because you have a co-located group and then you have remote people, and the remote people often aren't always included as often as needed, and that can create those senses of isolation. I think we've learned a lot in the last few weeks about overcoming that and how to engage people. And we need to get that paradigm will shift again. As a leader and manager, you need to be cognizant. Yep, you're right. We're going to have this blended workforce. This is different again. How do we create an operating rhythm that works? Now we have a different, again, working way of working. Things will continue to change. I think we spoke about using new data sets, anticipating trends. That includes measuring your performance, understanding how we're going, what's working, what's not, and that critical thinking that goes with understanding why it's happening. Look for the trends and then setting up mechanisms to have quick decisions to pivot and move forward. In a declining recession-based market where revenues are declining, speed to market in terms of responding to customer needs, but also how efficiently and effectively you can do that, will differentiate businesses very, very quickly at this time. And so it's very important that we set ourselves up and be prepared to change and recognize that and create those mechanisms to do that as well. So that's in summary. I think that's I guess what we think the future may look like. I'd be interested to see any more questions or queries come through as to anyone has extensions of that view. I'm just reading some of the questions here. Collaboration in a blended workforce. It is a challenge, and yes, I think it's about building, trying to recreate what we did in the past and doing it in a way that is efficient of people's time and use, those sorts of things. Thank you all for attending today's webinar. Please continue to stay on the line and enter any questions or comments. Phil, I see, and others have been answering those questions moving forward. Our next webinar will be the same time next week, and I think the real focus of that webinar is going to be the challenge of going back to work. Where I think that we're going to build a webinar around that and talk about some of those things. So think of those things, some of those questions around technology, collaboration, and that sort of stuff. We'll talk about what that looks like. We have a few more minutes. If there's any further questions coming through, please feel free to share them. Also, if any of you have any further questions or would like to communicate with myself or anyone from the Coxswain team, you can, if you know our numbers or emails directly, then feel free to reach out. For those of you who maybe don't know us directly, if by emailing us at remoteworking@coxswainalliance.com, we will respond within 24 hours or shorter to that. As I said, we've adapted our way of working. We are now working on a number of projects with people where we are doing this. A lot of it's virtually, so we're working over VCs, doing virtual workshops and the like. And we've had to adapt the way that we're doing it. I think there'll be much more of that moving forward for all organisations, not just us. The changing service delivery offer is going to change for many of us. Okay, I'll just give another couple of minutes to ask any more questions coming through. See, we've still got some chat going on. It's been great to see that there's been lots of communication happening in the background. Okay, thank you, Hugh. Thank you, Mark. Yes, goodbye. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I hope this has been of use and informative, and you've got some takeaways. As we always do, we will circulate the slides for this, and we'll also send you a link for the webinar that you can either rewatch it or